ComBank Summit, Forward Together 2025, creating a sustainable future.
That was a very, very generous introduction, and I feel very humbled following the Honorable Governor's speech. But let me once again acknowledge the Governor's presence, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, who requires no introduction, and also the CEO, Managing Director, and also Chairman of the Commercial Bank. I see many distinguished government leaders, private sector leaders, academia, civil society organizations. Very good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today at the inaugural Commercial Bank Summit 2025. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Commercial Bank of Ceylon for bringing us all together at this very timely moment as we jointly explore ways to create a sustainable future for everyone. Today, I'd like to reflect on why sustainability and the SDGs are not abstract concepts, but a practical roadmap for resilience and opportunity in Sri Lanka and the wider developing world. Across the globe, already mentioned by the chairman, we are living through a convergence of crises. Look what's happening in the Middle East. We are deeply worried about the spillover effects beyond the region. Climate change, that is real. We feel that. Many more countries are feeling debt stress. Inequality is growing. People suffering from rising costs of living. There is erosion of trust in institutions and social fabric, and technological disruption, to name a few. But Sri Lanka, as a community, has gone through turbulent times and we have come out strong. But these challenges are compounding, as evident in the impact of climate-induced disasters on farmers and food systems, economic strain on low-income households and small businesses, and the burden of debt on both the public and private sectors. And you can perhaps lift more. So the situation we face today is not just a development challenge, it is a sustainability challenge. I was very happy to see this very comprehensive set of topics you're covering in this conference, because for us, sustainability is not only about greening and protecting the planet. People and planet cannot be separated. Therefore, inclusion and equity are prerequisites for sustainable development. And you understood that. That's why you have this very comprehensive conference. So what we are talking about here is development with quality. That is what sustainable development is all about. The 2030 Agenda and its 17 SDGs give us the roadmap for a sustainable future. Sri Lanka has shown strong commitment to the SDGs, as evident from our voluntary national reviews to national plans on climate, education, digital, and social protection. Almost every sector has a sustainability roadmap. And UNDP, as part of the UN system, have been very privileged to support the country throughout this journey. But it is really now time to accelerate our action. We only have 5 years left, less than 5 years left, until the 2030 deadline, yet only about 16.7% of global SDGs targets on track. We felt a serious setback due to the pandemic and economic meltdown. For Sri Lanka, the challenge is equally daunting. Its SDGs index score stands at 67.92, placing the country 93rd out of 167 nations measured, and revealing a substantial gap to its optimal performance. So we must accelerate integrated policy reforms, breaking the silos. My previous speakers talked about that, mobilizing sustainable financing and deepening multi-sectoral collaboration to bridge our SDG gap. The recently launched 2025 Human Development Report of UNDP paints a very similar picture. Sri Lanka ranks 89th on Human Development Index, or HDI, out of 193 countries and territories. The good news is that Sri Lanka continues to remain as a high HDI country in the region, following Iran, but we don't know what's going to happen to Iran given what's happening in a country, in a region. While the HDI rose from 0.757 in 2014 to 0.776 in 2023, the country fell in ranking from 73rd to 84th. So this really means that it's not a competition, let me say this, but the other countries are moving faster in the HDI journey. Indeed, South Asia as a region experienced the fastest HDI recovery post-pandemic, while Sri Lanka continues to be impacted by the economic crisis, and recovery has been very, very minimal, if not stagnated. This is underscored by the reductions shown in the inequality-adjusted HDI value between 2021 and 23, suggesting that inequality really hurts. Inequality accounts for an 18% loss in potential human development for Sri Lanka. And the biggest driver for inequality is obviously income. The HDR reports that the poorest 40% of the population holds 18.5% of income, while the richest 1% holds 20%. As confirmed by UNDP's 2023 Multi-Dimensional Vulnerability Index, MVI, development without equality has a long-lasting impact on the overall human development trajectory and the quality of development. So sustainability, once again, is about inclusivity and equality. The SDGs that will leave no one behind and bring life with dignity can unlock not just long-term development, but also stability, investor confidence, and global competitiveness in economies. And the financial sector, represented powerfully in this room, is central to that transformation. Banks and financial institutions are not only gatekeepers of capital, you are gatekeepers of trust, livelihoods for many, and future readiness. For developing economies like Sri Lanka, the cost of inaction is simply too high. But we also have an opportunity to reimagine growth that is greener, fairer, and more inclusive. To this end, as already mentioned by the Honorable Governor, we have joined hands with the central bank to design the first green finance taxonomy. And I know many of you are building your instruments around that framework. We are also working with the central bank to promote financial literacy, especially among women, young people, and MSMEs. Findings from the MVI, Multidimensional Vulnerability Index study, reveal that household indebtedness is a major driver of vulnerability, especially for women-headed households. And through our consultations across the country, it became evident many women have fallen victim of unsustainable borrowing practices in order to meet their daily requirements at home. So they're not investing in the future, they are investing in today, day-to-day survival. This is very, very precarious. So financial inclusion is not only a social imperative, it is a driver of resilience. I'm pleased to share that the educational modules and the teaching guidelines are currently in the final stages of validation with women entrepreneurs. And complementary to this initiative, we have launched an expert-led feminist economics network, and many of you are part of that network, which conducted a detailed literature review on the gendered dynamics of household indebtedness in Sri Lanka. In particular, the impact of household debt on marginalized communities before and after the public crisis in Sri Lanka. The analysis revealed that there is a significant gendered nature of household debt, where women and women-headed households are disproportionately impacted. So it's a gender bias inbuilt in the borrowing practice and the lending practices. It was found that lending practices are not gender neutral. Banks have both a critical role and ethical imperative to address these gaps and promote equitable access to finance amongst women. And through our work on women's economic empowerment, UNDP supports a systemic approach to access to finance for women entrepreneurs. This is complemented by work on the ground through several initiatives, working with women entrepreneurs to build skills, capacity, and networks to successfully engage in livelihoods and also enterprise ventures. And I call upon all the professionals from the banking sector to ensure equitable and inclusive access to finance services and opportunities amongst the most vulnerable. I also look forward to joining hands with many of you to roll out the National Financial Literacy Program to reach the furthest under the leadership of the central bank. Now, let me turn to financing for development. Against the backdrop of complex challenges, achieving the SDGs will require unprecedented investment, with a financing gap estimated at $4 trillion annually in developing economies alone. Next week, the world leaders are gathering in Spain at the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, which provides a unique opportunity to reform financing at all levels, including to support reform of the international financial architecture and addressing financing challenges, preventing the urgently needed investor push for the SDGs. Climate financing, in particular, requires urgent attention. Despite climate financing doubling since 2018, it must grow 5 times more to hit the $7.4 trillion a year needed to keep our 1.5 degree target by 2030. Of these climate finance flow, only around $76 billion is channeled towards adaptation, making affected countries and communities even more vulnerable. And economic damage under a business as usual scenario would only continue to exponentially increase in the future. As you know, at the last COP, countries agreed to a new collectively quantified goal on climate finance, NCQG, to triple finance to development countries, aiming to mobilize $300 billion annually by 2035. While this is a step in the right direction, it is far below the climate finance needs. And it only works if these promises are kept. And you know how many nation states are not honoring their commitment. While ODA has played and will continue to play a critical role, we must accept its growing limitations. And while the government of Sri Lanka has demonstrated their commitment to climate action, public resources alone would not be sufficient to meet these ambitions, particularly in light of its tight fiscal space. An estimated $10.85 billion was required to finance the mitigation sector targets under the current phase of NDC. And as the government is updating the NDC, the investment plan would reveal financing requirements, which I would believe will be even greater. For Sri Lanka, which depends significantly on its natural resources for economic growth, particularly in the sectors of agriculture, fisheries, and tourism, climate change, if left unchecked, will not only impact the economy, but also disrupt livelihoods, leaving more people further behind. So the stakes are very, very high. The vulnerable people endured enough hardships, and the window for opportunity to action to avoid intergenerational damage is rapidly narrowing. So we must actively unlock alternative sources of financing that must come from the private sector. So the message is very clear. Countries that can proactively mobilize and absorb finance would have a more competitive edge. This is where innovative financing tools come in. Therefore, we're working with the government to develop tools that attract and direct resources, particularly private finance, towards SDGs. For example, we're working with the government on the Integrated National Financing Framework for Just Energy Transition. The financing strategy of the INFF identifies opportunities for climate finance, therefore energy swaps, blended financing, and strategically leveraging private financing. To identify innovative ways of financing, UNDP is supporting the development of the climate finance strategy, which talks about also green revolving fund and climate-smart investment pipelines in areas like renewable energy, climate-resilient agriculture, nature-based solutions, and green buildings. This is a growing market here. And the finance sector can help de-risk and scale these investments through concessional loans, blended finance, and climate bonds. Again, it is my sincere hope that the banks in Sri Lanka will support comprehensive financing of these strategies so that our collective efforts will be cohesive, catalytic, and comprehensive. Lastly, I would like us to reflect how we can ensure sustainability becomes meaningful and inclusive. Marginalized communities and those left behind need an enabling ecosystem, which includes finance, mentorship, policy alignment, and market access. That's where you, our banking leaders, come in. So what can we do together? Here are 4 areas for joint action. Scale finance inclusion. This includes investing in digital tools and community outreach to bring more women, young people, persons living with disability, and informal workers into the financial system. 2, strengthen sustainable products. This includes developing and scaling green credit lines, ESG-linked portfolios, and microfinance for climate resilience. 3, advance climate finance innovation. This means co-designing and piloting sustainability-linked instruments with development partners, including through the INFF platform. And lastly, invest in green skills and knowledge. This means partnering with all of us to train your teams, clients, and communities on sustainability, risk, and opportunity. So at UNDP, we stand ready to co-create and co-invest in this journey with you. The key message from this year's Human Development Report is that digital transformation, particularly AI, artificial intelligence, could be a catalyst in propelling sustainable development. UNDP has been working closely with the government, particularly Ministry of Digital Economy, to ensure that they are able to execute the National Digital Economy Blueprint and Digital Public Infrastructure, or DPI, agenda to accelerate people-centered digital transformation in Sri Lanka to achieve the SDGs. If you're interested in what this means, please come to me and I'm very happy to explain. But the point is, it is time for Sri Lanka to realize that development pathway does not have to be linear. AI and digital solutions can leapfrog Sri Lanka's development experience if we make the right choice by investing in capabilities and putting people at the center of national strategy. This is a historic moment for us to jump the queue. This year, UNDP marks 60 years of global partnership for sustainable development. And here in Sri Lanka, we are reflecting on 58 years of shared progress. And this milestone is not about celebrating an institution, but honoring the collective efforts that have advanced peace, resilience, and opportunity for millions of people. From empowering women and youth to supporting democratic governance and climate action, UNDP has walked alongside Sri Lankan people and institutions, always grounded in partnership and driven by impact. These achievements are a testament to the long-standing support of our donors and partners, such as yourselves. Your trust has enabled us to move from crisis response to long-term development, from recovery to resilience. So sustainability is not a choice, it's a necessity for today. Sri Lanka has the opportunity to reimagine our development paradigm. Let's turn finance into futures, and let's turn our collective ambition into real change on the ground for every Sri Lankan. We very much look forward to working with you in building a sustainable future, and best of luck for the remaining of the program. Thank you.